Hello, New Jersey Devils fans. Welcome to the Let's Go Devils State of the Fan Address. I am Nick Villano, editor-in-chief of pucksandpitchforks.com. I will be your conductor tonight, taking this train as we turn a new Keefe. Turning a new Keefe. The New Jersey Devils introduced Sheldon Keefe as their new head coach. An interesting dichotomy. Honest to goodness, it had to already be a breath of fresh air for Sheldon Keefe, who comes into the media room. He gets to answer multiple questions by people on the payroll. He gets to speak to some of my writers. He gets to speak to some of the beat writers. And listen, the beat writers asked interesting questions. Ryan Novozinski put out a really interesting article before the press conference about Sheldon Keefe, speaking to some of the people who know him and kind of what to expect here. That's on ng.com, so make sure you go read that. That one's a good one. But I look at I look at everything that can change here. Here's the thing: is that I really wanted Sheldon Keefe to get fired last year, and then the Devils could hire him. But it was pretty clear that he was going to get another head coaching job. I don't think they would have replaced Lindy Ruff with him. I think they could have really kind of brought him here to replace Burnett. After it's very clear that this talent pool was getting the Devils to that next step. I don't know if Sheldon Keefe here last year was going to change anything. Too many things went wrong last year. But I think he would have been a better hire than Travis Green, obviously. But it didn't happen. His team made the second round, and they ended up firing Kyle Dubas instead of Sheldon Keefe. And he actually got an extension. It's only for 2 years. And that extension actually ended up costing the Devils a lot of money because they had to beat that extension to get him to coach this year. I think there was a lot of factors, and he mentioned some of those factors at the press conference about why he chose to not take the year off, why he chose not to kind of spend time with his family and kind of jump right in. I think he said it was the day after or a day or two after word came down that he got fired. He also said that he knew that was coming. He had trouble sleeping the night before. He kind of knew that he was going to get called into the meeting the next day. So he gets a call from Brad Treliving, the Toronto Maple Leafs GM, and it says that the Devils want to talk to you. I've given Tom Fitzgerald permission to speak with you, and the rest is history. And I wrote about it. I think it was the day of the hiring. Sheldon Keefe has all the tools to be the greatest head coach in New Jersey Devils history. He truly does. He's young. He's honestly, when he got hired by the Leafs, I was worried because he is a fantastic coach. You know, he replaced Mike Babcock in 2019, and then the pandemic hit. And honestly, like, things in Canada were much worse than they were in the U.S., and they were bad in the U.S. As far as changes to lifestyle and sacrifices made for the greater good. There was a lot that Canada was asked of that the U.S. wasn't. So being in Toronto, the hub of it all, you know, the biggest population center, you know, that I can't see it not having an impact on things like coaching a hockey team. A hockey team of young guys who can't, you know, live their life. Obviously, the last 2 years, that can't be the excuse. But I kind of expected a lot more of those Leafs teams because I do think Sheldon Keefe is a good coach. And what I saw from him wasn't – I saw some things that I think we complain about a lot of coaches and do end up getting coaches fired is overthinking some lineup decisions, trying to make the best of bad situations and overcompensating, trying to over-discipline some young players, and you end up not playing them. I know Nick Robertson has come up as somebody that's like, well, if you treated him this way. Timothy Liljegren is another one. It's like, well, if you're not putting him in the lineup over some of the veterans that you have who aren't playing well, like, why would we expect, is this going to be Brendan Smith all over again? I think things were different in Toronto. I think the Devils have different expectations. And not that they don't expect to win the Stanley Cup. Eventually, I do think that, and they mentioned that. But it sounds like they understand this is a process. They took a step 2 years ago, and they took 4 steps back last year. How do you replace those 4 steps back? And there's a few other factors in New Jersey that ended up actually, ironically, taking down Lindy Ruff. The goaltending was real bad in Toronto, and they kept making real bad decisions. Like trading for Matt Murray, like we all knew that was a bad decision, and they did it anyway. Like it was very clear that was a terrible decision. They went with Ilya Samsonov, and like the Vitek Vanacek the signing that Fitzgerald made, the upside, like the ceiling on that deal, is so limited. Like he's not gonna turn into Sorokin. Samsonov had figured out what he was. And the floor was so low with both of those guys, and we saw it this past year that they were 2 of the worst goalies in the league. So I think he was sunk by bad goaltending. But he's developed some players, some real good players there, and I think he comes into the New Jersey. He doesn't have to develop as much. He has to develop Luke Hughes. He has to develop Simon Nemec. And Simon Nemec is a guy I really want to keep an eye on. I'm actually going to write about this tonight. I think that Simon Nemec is the guy who's going to get the most out of the Sheldon Keefe hiring. I think that the style that he plays is exactly what Keefe wants. Like, he wants an offensive idea, but he doesn't want you to make mistakes, and he wants you to have a really good two-way game. And I think that eventually he might even favor Nemec over Luke Hughes. And not that he has to. Like, it's not like to pick one or the other. Like, you have both on the team, and they're both going to be great. But I just think he's going to really like what Nemec brings to the table. And Vinny Parisi wrote for Pucks Pitchforks, I think it was last week, that Nico Hischier is another guy he's going to fall in love with. And again, that's just a guy that he really likes to play. We saw Austin Matthews really play well defensively this year and kind of turn into that guy that, he's probably the best scorer in the game today, but also like not a liability on defense. In fact, I think he was a positive on defense. So not only is he contributing so well offensively, but on the defensive side, he's doing his thing, and it never took away from the offense, and that's so huge for what the Devils need. They need a guy who isn't going to try to turn Alexander Holtz into Jay Pandolfo, right? I can't try to make Jesper Bratt into Sergei Brylin. Jesper Bratt's a fine defensive player. And it's saying something because he's such a good offense player. To have a guy who's fine defensively when you're that good offensively, the problem is that I feel like Lindy Ruff and John Hines before him just couldn't put the pieces in place perfectly. There was always it just felt a little off. Like, oh, you're leaning too much into the offense, and then you're overcompensating. Now you're leaning a lot into the defense. When I think it was in 22-23 where Lindy Ruff, the first half of the season, just kept putting Nico Hischier out there to match up against the other team's best player. And it worked, but you're taking away everything offensively that Nico Hischier does. This year, we saw the opposite. This year was the first year in, I think, 5 years that Nico Hischier took more offensive zone faceoffs than he did defensive zone faceoffs. And that's fine because you didn't have Jack Hughes, right? That was the real factor in that. I think that you just had to lean so heavily on that Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, Timo Meier line that and it was Hischier and Bratt with different players throughout the year. But he leaned so heavily on that line that it took away a lot of what Nico Hischier does best. And I don't think Sheldon Keefe's going to do that. And if he does do it, it's going to be for such a short period of time. We saw him do a couple things like Marner, a couple things with Nylander, where they got down the third line. Just throughout the process, we're talking about 4 or 5 years now of this process. And like throughout that process, on a micro scale, like there's going to be moments you're like, I don't agree with this. This is not very smart. But it seemed like he would retract those situations pretty quickly. Like, oh, this isn't working. Let me try something else. So I think that's why he's just the perfect coach for where the Devils are right now. You got this perfect dichotomy of veterans like Andre Palat, Dougie Hamilton. You can even consider like Heischer in that realm, and Bratt in that realm, and obviously Timo Meier is kind of getting up there and into that range. Eric Halla, like guys like that. And then you got these young stars. You got the Jack Hughes, the Luke Hughes, Selman Nemetz. And then there's going to be these guys that develop. I'm interested to see what Seamus Casey looks like this year. I'm interested to see when Lenny Haminaho comes in. And then I'm interested in this 10th overall pick. We're going to talk a lot about the 10th overall pick because we've been talking about two things pretty specifically over the last couple of weeks, and that's the draft and the coach. Now we have the coach. Now let's look ahead of the draft. So I do want to talk about that a little bit later. But let's stick to Sheldon Keefe for just a second. I think he's going to come in. And Fitzgerald, he said something interesting that caught a lot of people's eyes when I tweeted about it. That he didn't talk about every player, and I made the point that this was probably a faster process than the Devils would have liked. It sounded like they interviewed a lot of people. Word on the street was that, speaking of Pandolfo was one of the guys they interviewed. He's the head coach of Boston College or Boston University. I actually can't remember which one now. One of the two. And he also interviewed David Carl of the University of Denver, who reigning national champs. And David Carl is a fantastic coach. Like a fantastic coach. It is Boston University. Thank you, Sam Wu. Sam Wu with the text coming in clutch. But David Carl's a fantastic coach, but he's like in his mid-30s. It's just a little early. And you can't be a little early right now. Like Tom Fitzgerald has to hit a home run with this hiring. I think he did. Time will tell. There is downside here. Keefe could be spooked by what happened in Toronto. He might have needed some time away, and not taking that time away might hurt him in the long run. I don't think it will, but it could, right? Well, you got to look at both sides of this. I think that Keefe's going to be a really good coach, but I also have to understand that there's this other side where it doesn't happen. But let's talk about the positives, because there's just been so much negative. I don't think it's possible to have as bad injury luck, knock on wood. I don't think it's possible to have as bad as injury luck as the Devils had last year. Like, everybody got hurt outside of Bratt, Dawson Mercer, and Alex Holtz. Right? Everybody was out for a little bit, and everybody was playing hurt. We heard about some of the injuries that John Marino was dealing with, and it was being held together with chewing gum and Scotch tape. Siegenthaler kept getting hurt and trying to rush back to fight for a playoff spot. Jack Hughes, man, like the dude, I don't know what, like that 1 year that he like bulked up, he looked really good. So I hope he does it again this offseason. I'm trying to figure out what the Devils need to do this offseason to now that they got the coach, and a coach I really like, a coach I think is a good hire, a smart hire, the right hire, a guy they paid, by the way, because that was the big thing, right? That was the big thing when they hired Lindy Ruff, is that Laviolette wanted the bag, Gallant wanted the power, Ruff just wanted an opportunity. So they gave the guy who took the opportunity for like a fifth of the price. I don't know what the extension was going to look like for Ruff, but that's null and void too, right? The Devils just got a bunch of free money because Buffalo decided to hire Ruff. So, the Buffalo scratches the Devils back. The Devils scratch the Maple Leafs back. Maybe the Maple Leafs will hire Don Granato. Who knows? My point is that I do think that this team is going to be in such a better place. Do I think they're going to win the Stanley Cup next year? I don't. There's just too many good teams. And we're kind of going to get into that because, there's one problem the Devils are facing right now. And it looks like that every team is going to get a window. And this is the Devils' window, and they blew one of the years. All right? They just completely blew it. I think you had to make the right coaching hire, and you did. And let me just get into that. Where this conversation is coming from is actually the San Jose Sharks, which is wild because they are terrible. They're going to be terrible again next year. But they got the first overall pick. And I think that Macklin Celebrini is going to start in the NHL next year. They also have Will Smith, who just signed his entry-level contract. And he looks really good. So now you got this 1-2 center punch. Basically what the Devils have been building their entire franchise around. Will Smith might be great. So you're looking at two players with I think Macklin Celebrini and Jack Hughes have the same upside. So you're looking at a guy who has the same upside as Jack Hughes, your best player by far. And then you got Will Smith, who has a higher upside than Hischier. Hischier has a great upside, Selke guy, 80 points, 90 points. But Will Smith could be great. He could be the Draisaitl to Celebrini's McDavid. I don't think Celebrini is going to be McDavid, but you know what I mean. And then you look at Chicago, who's Bedard, right? That team's going to be great soon. You got Columbus has the makings of something. It's not coming together, and they just hired Don Waddell from the Carolina Hurricanes, who built a fantastic roster down there in Carolina. Carolina's another team. If I'm Carolina, I'm deathly afraid I blew it. This was your chance, right? You've had this fantastic team, but you kept relying on Freddie Anderson to be your goalie. These teams that aren't going all in on a goalie, I will admit when I'm wrong. I will. As much as I ragged on the Connor Hellebuyck contract, it would be hard to hate it right now. It would be hard to hate it. Man, I think it's going to be so bad at the end. I do. I think it's going to be so bad at the end. But if Hellebuyck has... Here's where I'm at. Corey Schneider devastated me. I wanted that man to have the great team in front of him. And by the time he finally did, he was a broken goalie. And I'm just looking at how the business works. And there are so many more Corey Schneiders than there are Marc-Andre Fleury's. If you get a Marc-Andre Fleury and you sign him to 8 years through, I think, 37 years old, you're fine. This is great. There's going to be ups and downs, but, you rely on the development there. And I'm looking at the goalies that are available. I like Markstrom. I think Markstrom's the right choice because he's not going to cost as much. You probably, I would just, what is he making? $6 million a year? Taking out his whole salary does hurt. But if it means you're going to get out of it with a second round pick and a prospect, that's not Seamus Casey. I think I'm just going to do that move. I think he has no trade clause, so he has a lot of power in this, and the Flames don't, right? They vetoed a trade last year. And I bet you the return is going to be more than they end up getting for Marks from this offseason. And you also look at what the Devils have been going through. Linus Ullmark reportedly vetoed a trade to somebody, and people are starting to speculate that it was the Devils. We don't have concrete information on that, but it's more of a put two and two together. We learned that Jake Allen vetoed a trade to the Devils before he actually got traded to the Devils later this season. I think it was in December that Jake Allen vetoed a trade to the Devils. And then, Markstrom opened the door for a trade to the Devils, And the Flames owner vetoed the trade. It's hard to get a goalie in this league. But we see just how important that goalie is. Look at this Panthers-Rangers series. I'm not somebody who's going to shy away from giving the Rangers their due. But only one Ranger deserves the due. And it's Igor Shesterkin. I truly think the Alexis Lafreniere thing is just kind of over-marketing of a first overall pick in New York City, who's still probably kind of a failure. Like, the numbers that people are throwing out for this guy are just weird to try to make him the star. But Igor Shesterkin he might be the second best player on the planet. Not considering position. I think he's the best goalie. I'm trying to think if there's a better goalie. Do I think there's a better goalie? I go back and forth with him and Sorokin, but Sorokin didn't have a good season. Ottinger's good in Dallas, but he's not as good as Shesterkin. Hellebuck, like we said, really good in Winnipeg, not as good as Shesterkin. We're seeing it. Bobrovsky, not as good as Shesterkin. And I think what you're learning there is you can have every piece. But when those pieces go cold, like having a great goalie is going to save you. And I know that series is 2-2 going back to New York. I'm hoping against hope that the Panthers win. But Shesterkin is changing the possibilities in the series. Florida's a better team. Florida's a great team. Shesterkin is keeping the Rangers in this by himself sometimes. Kreider's having a fine series. He had a bad game yesterday. But Shesterkin's pretty much keeping them in it by himself. I haven't even heard the name Panarin. Mika's been fine. Mika's advantage has been fine. But, again, going back to what this means for the Devils, you got to get the guy. Unfortunately, the guy is either older, and you got to take a risk on a contract. So you're talking about Markstrom, paying the end of Markstrom's contract. Saros, giving Saros an extension. Ullmark, does Ullmark want to come here? And was he a product of that Boston system that just makes it so great for goalies? Or you got to go for a guy like, do you take a chance on a Spencer Knight? Craig Patrick wrote that for Puck's Pitchforks this week. Like, maybe take a chance on Spencer Knight. Like, maybe the Panthers don't want to pay him. But what are you going to pay for a prospect that hasn't worked out? And, Florida cannot keep him on the roster. He's not on the roster right now, right? I don't think he's on the roster. Maybe he's like a third because you kind of keep extras. But he's a guy that's been in the program, the player assistance program. And I don't hold that against him. It sounds like he was dealing with a mental health disorder. So, good on him for getting the help. But that also adds to the risk. You just got to be realistic. There's now a risk involved. And, you look at the other guys. You're not going to get Yaroslav Askarov from Nashville. There's nothing you can trade. There was one small window where Askarov was on the block, but you needed a top 5 pick, and the Devils didn't have one. And I just here's where the home run comes, is if Sorokin is available. Trade everybody. Everybody not Heischer, Hughes, Nemitz. Those are the three names I'm not trading. I never want to trade Mercer. I think Dawson Mercer I think this is so perfect for the Devils that he had his bad season in a contract year. So perfect. If he's smart, he shouldn't sign anything longer than 2 years. But I think the Devils are going to just stick to 5. You got to sign 5. Sign for 5. 5 years. I need a 5-year deal. And I think he will. But if it's for Sorokin, yeah, sorry. I'll sell you Mercer and Holtz in the first round pick for Sorokin. Signed for 6 or 7 more years. Yeah, I'm doing that for Sorokin. I'll send him the bag. So I this is all to say that the Devils have to put Sheldon Keefe in the best possible possible chance to win. And to do that, he needs a goalie. And they mentioned that, right? Jake Allen is fine. You also have the condition on the trade that Montreal gets a second-round pick if the Devils playing more than, 41 games, right? 40 or 41 games. So you can't go in with Jake Allen. You just can't. Like, it's just, he's a fine backup. We keep calling a 1B. He needs to be a backup. He needs to play like 20 to 25 games, unless there's injuries. Here's the other part of this. I'm not off the Nico Dawes train. Dude came off a hip injury and you overused him. And that's something I don't think Sheldon Keefe has been accused of. A lot of coaches overuse their goalies. I don't think Sheldon Keefe has ever really done that. Even like riding the hot hand is, every coach does some form of that. But Lindy Ruff did it to such an extreme level that I think he hurt Nico Dawes twice. Like, I truly think that. I think he hurt him in 21, 22, and I think he hurt him last season. So I look at Dawes and his skill set and his ability and his movement and just what he can do with his glove, his hockey IQ. I still think there's something there. I do. So I think the Devils also think that. And then there's also Akira Schmid, who won the Rangers series. We forget. You have this foundation of risk, right? Jake Allen, Nico Dawes, Akira Schmid. You can put Jacob Malik and Tyler Brennan, who are both talented but flawed goalies, and with not a lot of experience. You have this foundation, right? You have this pool of foundation, but it's loose. It's not solid. You can't go into the season with that. So what you do, you bring in a guy like, this is why I just think the Markstrom thing makes sense. Because then you got two guys in Allen and Markstrom. Again, unless there's the superstar. If there's a superstar, go get the superstar. But if there's not the superstar, like I think I might rather have Markstrom than Saros. Just because Saros is another guy. It scares the heck out of me. Think he's going to get injured soon. Don't know how much he has left. Coming off his worst season. This is the part we haven't talked about. Saros come off by far his worst season. And the Predators still made the playoffs. I'm going to look up his numbers real quick because I just want to kind of see where he was as far as like numbers. So I don't think I'm crazy. He's definitely had his worst season. I thought he was 30 already though, and he's 29, which sounds crazy, but that does change things. He had a .906 save percentage, which is the worst since, the worst ever he's ever had. Besides the one game he played in his rookie year when he was 20. He's led the game in games played for 3 years in a row. Played 64 this season, 64 last season, 67 the season before. I'm sure Mount Tampa would love that, but I think the fact that they had Pekka Rinne for all those years allowed them to kind of make that decision to just ride him like a horse. He played 36 games in 2021. Obviously, that was the COVID-shortened year. He played 40 games in 1920. Again, another COVID-shortened year. But in 18-19, he only played 31 games. In 17-18, he only played 26 games. In 16-17, he only played 21 games. Having Rinne there really allowed him to kind of ramp up his career. But is the tread starting to fall off the tires with that .906 save percentage, right? We could dig deeper into the numbers. I don't think he was as bad as that looks, but I still don't think he was as good as he's been in years past. And again, the Predators want a bag to get Saros. They want that Mercer Holtz first-round pick returned. I am going to make a bold statement. I don't think the Devils should trade the first-round pick for anything. I just think it should be off the table unless you get Sorokin or something of that level. But take it off the table. Take it. Trey Matthews, and friend of this podcast, writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, has a different thought process and says he wants them to really explore that trade like they did in 2022 with that second overall pick. I don't see anybody who's worth it right now. I don't see anybody who's realistically worth that second or 10th overall pick. And I'm going to tell you why. This draft has a chance to provide the Devils with a super duper star that they can put on an entry level contract when everyone needs to get paid. You have to play chess if you're going to win the Stanley Cup. The Dallas Stars played chess. So now that they had to pay Jason Robertson, now that they had to pay Jake Ottinger, now they had to pay, all those younger players are starting to get paid. Ruben Hintz. Now they get Logan Stankoven. And that was a lucky pick that the Devils should have made. But now they get Logan Stankoven. They got a couple other young players coming in on entry level deals while all of these other players are getting paid. The Devils need something like that. And I'm going to. I wrote an article yesterday. It was last night, so you probably saw it today, about where everyone had the Devils as far as their draft pick with the 10th overall pick. So Corey Prongman of The Athletic, friend of the podcast, he had them taking Beckett Seneke at Oshawa. Big guy, right wing, 6'2", 6'3", somewhere in that range. Dude has skill for days. Like truly, he has skill for days. Like he's a specimen. And he might be available with 10. He's probably, I don't want to say probably. He could definitely be available at 10. And I think the Devils are going to salivate at that skill set along with that size. Right. A lot of people are saying, size. We need size. We need big footsmen to play the hockey team next to Jack Hughes. Protect. Look at Jacob Trouba. Look at Matt Rempe. Oh, no. Build like you've been building and make adjustments along the way. And somebody like Beckett Seneke would be that adjustment. Right. You're looking at a guy who is big, but fits what you're trying to do. Look at what the Washington Capitals did with Tom Wilson. Right, dude's big, and I don't want Tom Wilson. Don't take guys' heads off. Don't do dumb goon stuff when you need to be on the ice. Don't take dumb penalties. Don't put this team on the penalty kill. But the size, the grit, along with the offensive skill, when you put those two things together, it's a formula for success. Alex Chavancy, from the Hockey Writers and from NJD on the Rush, another friend of the podcast, we're going to have him on again soon. He's going, I'm going to call it back to the well. He wants to take Berkeley Catton, the Spokane Chiefs. If that team sounds familiar, it used to be home to one Ty Smith, roommate of Jack Hughes, former number one defenseman in Calder voting. I think it was in 2022, 2021, 2022. I can't remember. I think it was 2021, actually. I don't know. The years are all mixing together. But anyway, he was really good. And you just remember he was fantastic at the WHL. But certain development situations didn't really work out for him. He just fell off the face of the earth. He fell off the face of the earth in 2020, whatever it was, 2023, 2022, right? The year before he got traded for John Marino. So 2021-22, fell off the face of the earth in his second year in the league. Devils traded him, got out while the getting was good. Smart move. But anyway, looks like we got a super chat from Nathan Dowie. Something to consider. Keefe was known as a tough guy in juniors. I think he could instill that in the young guys. Yeah, maybe. Did you consider the Toronto Maple Leafs team tough, though? I didn't. I thought they were fine. I thought they were middle of the pack. But you're not going to turn this team into the Panthers. You're just not. And when you're facing a team like the Panthers, look at the Rangers want to be that. They want to be this tough team. They want to be we're big tough guys with skilled players. And it's only working because they have the best goalie in the league. If they didn't, they'd be losing these games 5-2. That exists. I'm not trying to take it away from them. But the toughness of it all is not helping them win games. It's almost like helping them lose games. Because Jacob Trouba is headhunting like a mother. And, you know, that conversation, I'm not even getting it because some Rangers stupid podcast will retweet this. But the fact that I want a good coach. I don't care if he's a tough guy. I don't care if, like, all these people wanted Craig Berube. But the system Craig Berube would have brought here didn't work. A lot of done with chase, a lot of, like, rush for the puck. Like, the Devils have to use their skill. Use your skill. That's what the Devils have to do. But thank you for the super chat, Nate. I really appreciate it. Anyway, so I do want to get back to draft picks. So Berkeley Catton, he's a center. I wish there was more centers available with the 10th overall pick. Even Catton, I don't know if he comes out as a center full time. You really need a guy. I struggle saying this because you still got Heischer and Hughes, but it's not that long until you have to pay Heischer. Was it? It's 2027, right? Is that when he needs to get paid again? It's 3 years. So that's a scary proposition. But if you get a guy like Catton and he can play center, like, you really, like, this team misses. I hate saying his name, but the Michael McLeod role. They really miss that guy. If he's guilty of what he's being accused of, awful human, terrible human. Don't want him anywhere near anything that has to do with hockey. But you miss that role if you're the Devils, and you kind of have to figure out how do we replace it. And I was hoping you could do in the draft. Maybe Catton could turn into that kind of guy, but then you're like, are you using the 10th overall pick on that? Honestly, like, what did McLeod go? 12th, 14th, something like that. And we were all happy if he turned into the guy that he looked like. So it all depends. Next guy on the list was Cole Yzerman. I'm going to get to him last. I want to talk about Cole Yzerman. I want to give him plenty of time, but I want to get to him last. Sam Costantino was Sportsnet's pick. Zeev Boyum was Sam Costantino's pick from Sportsnet. I said his name wrong, but University of Denver defenseman, really skilled. It would be. Are you really, like, setting, like, you already don't have room for Seamus Casey? Are you gonna not? Are you gonna take this guy with the 10th overall pick because you're taking the best guy available? I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. Bleacher Report's Lyle Richardson, another friend of the podcast, picked Sam Dickinson. This one I have a harder time saying no to. I don't think he's going to be available. I will say that. I think he's going to get taken before 10. But if he is, man, like, the size and the impact that this guy has every night, it would. Tom Fitzgerald would have a hard time not taking him. And he's left-handed. So, like, that kind of adds to it because the Devils are so stacked on the right side. And, like, maybe you eventually trade Kevin Ball for, like, a bigger piece. That one I have trouble. Like, buy him. I could take him or leave him. Dickinson, I really like Dickinson as a defenseman. You're just in this weird spot as the Devils where, like, are you gonna take another defenseman? They say you can't have enough, but that you kind of have too many. Fansided's Todd Matthews wrote 4 Pucks and Pitchforks that he wanted them to take Caden Lindstrom out of Medicine Hat. He's another guy I don't know if he's going to fall to 10. I think somebody's going to take him. But he's an interesting player because you can use him in a lot of different places. He's kind of like Curtis Lazar on, I don't want to say on steroids because it's like a bet, but like Curtis Lazar times 2. Really, really, really good player. I want to go back to Yzerman, though. I'm going to write a mock draft in a couple weeks, probably 3 weeks. I'm going to take Yzerman. The Devils should take Yzerman. His biggest flaw seems to be attitude. Okay. I mean, listen, you don't want to get too many attitude guys. You kind of want to humble these guys. But, like, if it's not, like, anything, like, serious, like, if it's just he has an attitude, he's a bad locker room guy, whatever, he's 17. Fix it. You got a really good coach in Sheldon Keefe. You got a foundation here. Like, what is he going to think? I'm the best guy on the planet? I'm here with Jack Hughes, Nico Heishan, Just Brett, Timo Meyer. Like, you're not going to walk in and think you're the best thing. You know, if somebody like the Blackhawks took, I might be worried. If somebody like the Ducks or the Sharks or one of the East teams, even like Ottawa, like a team like that, I wouldn't want to take a guy like that. The Devils are uniquely positioned to, not only do they have stars, but they have one of the best American stars we've seen in a long time. You know, it's Jack Hughes, it's Matthew Tkachuk, and it's Austin Matthews. It's probably going to lead the Americans in the Olympics if the NHL lets them go back in 2026. You know, having Yzerman have a guy who's probably looked up to, he's probably seen Jack Hughes' face and the face of his brothers in the locker room dozens of times. He's probably played with Luke, right? At some point, they probably played together, going around the loop. So going into a place where he already has guys he respects, and then other guys like Palat and who aren't going to take bupkis from a guy, I think it's a really good situation. I think that, and like, you can't deny this guy's talent. Like, this guy is like Cole Caulfield's talent in a bigger body. That's insane. We saw what Jack Hughes looked like with Cole Caulfield. Every time they get together, it's magic. Give me this magic. Cole Yzerman is going to be great in the NHL if he gets in the right situation. And I truly think the Devils are the right situation. And they're going to get a top 5, possibly a top 3 talent that just needs to get his head screwed on right. I think the Devils are going to do that. I think the college situation is going to do that a little bit too. Take Yzerman, take the talent, fix his attitude, and go from there. I truly think that it's going to work. It's a risk, but this draft is weird. There's a lot of guys who could be a top 5 talent. More than, like, honestly, this is one of those drafts where, you know, there's a lot of drafts that are bad, and you can find guys at 20 that have a top 5 talent. This one isn't a bad draft. It just has a lot of top 5 talent. Right, so that's on Pucks and Pitchforks right now, breaking down all of those possible 10th overall draft picks. And that's it. We made it through, guys. 45 minutes, a clean 45 for the State of the Fan Address on the Let's Go Devils podcast feed. I really appreciate you all staying with me here while I just spoke my nonsense, my stream of consciousness. I don't know how much I breathed here. I probably need to get some oxygen. So we're going to go do that. I'm going to drink my beer. A little PBR for the working man. But head to pucksandpitchforks.com. We're going to have a lot of good... I'm writing 5 articles over the next 2 days. So tomorrow morning you'll get 2. The next morning you'll get 3. I know I'm going to write the one about Simone Nemeth and Sheldon Keefe's impact on him. And I'm going to write a lot more because I'm excited. I am pumped. It's the end of the month. I loved you guys for May. And you guys have been showing up for May. We got over 320,000 views in the month of May. So Devils don't need to be playing hockey for you guys to shell out and show the boy some love. I want to shout out Sam Wu. You know, we're doing our best here with the situation that we're dealing with. But he's the number 1 producer for podcasts out there, and I really appreciate him. Got Got to give him some love. Got to give the Let's Go Devils podcast some love. If you didn't see it last night, they went live just with their reaction to the Sheldon Keefe press conference. If you go on pucksandpitchforks.com, we got Trey Matthews, Vinny Parisi, both giving the reaction to the press conference. So take a look at that. Go to pucksandpitchforks.com. Craig Patrick has a couple good pieces, including some guys from the Maple Leafs that he should target. So go check that out. Pucksandpitchforks.com. Every single day we will have content for you, for the working man and the working woman. Everybody, I really appreciate sticking around with me. Have a great night. I hope you had a restful past Memorial Day weekend, and I will see you again soon. Good night.